Life Unrehearsed on CJAD 800. Brought to you by Marco Vendramini of IG Private Wealth Management. MarcoVendramini.com.
And good afternoon. Welcome to Life Unrehearsed. My name is Matt Del Vecchio, specializing in life transitions, downsizing, in the senior living industry.
And I'm Corrie Sirota, clinical social worker and psychotherapist specializing in grief and loss.
Coming right up on the first half of today's show, well, we've all heard about some marital struggles and increased divorce rates during the pandemic. Has this resulted in increased surveillance by private investigators? Well, you bet it has. We're going to hear from a Montreal private investigator who has been very busy these days. So, Corrie, what's going on? What's doing exciting this week?
Speaking of busy, not so much. This was actually, but I'm grateful to have had a quieter week in terms of, because the last few were so busy. But while I was quiet and trying to recoup, sounds like you were quite busy.
Yeah, actually, this coming Wednesday, very excited. I'm going to be part of what's called McGill Cares webcast. This is a wonderful webcast hosted by the amazing Claire Webster. And so I'm going to be on this Wednesday at 12 noon with on the topic of making the transition into a residence. And so myself and Dr. Jose Moret will be the panelists with Claire. And looking forward to that. So that's McGill Cares, Wednesday at 12 noon. And what do we have coming up in the second half, Corrie?
On the second half, do you have a phobia? Perhaps you have a phobia that has been exacerbated by the pandemic. That's not unusual. There's probably a lot more germaphobes out there than we actually really know. So because of that, we're going to be talking to my colleague and friend, a licensed psychotherapist, Georgia Dow. She's going to help us effectively deal with our fears and phobias. She is amazing.
She is amazing. Can't wait to be talking to Georgia. And again, that's coming up after the 4:30 news. All right. Now, ever wonder about the life of a private investigator? Corrie and I were having a discussion the other day about these reports of marital troubles and increased divorce rates during this pandemic. And we both immediately thought of Jorge Pinto. We've had him on the show before. George is a private investigator and owner of Plan B Investigations. And we were wondering if his surveillance business has actually increased due to doubting spouses and partners. So we invited him back to hear what's going on out there. George, welcome back to Life Unrehearsed.
How are you, Matt and Corrie?
Doing well, George. Doing well. Thank you very much for coming on.
Fantastic. Thank you.
All right. Well, let's get right into it. Are you actually seeing an uptick in your surveillance business with people who want to have their partners followed?
Yes, I've seen a huge increase. As a matter of fact, it's I actually never seen an increase like it is right now. A lot of marital cases, the calls that I get recently, yes.
So that's sad, but it's a harsh reality. So what happens? Can you explain how it actually plays out from the time somebody makes that phone call?
Well, the minute I get the phone call, already when they're calling is because there's already a suspicion and there's already a problem. So, the spouses, they feel right away that something is wrong. So the way it goes is that they call me, we can, we do the conversation by phone, or they come and meet me at my office, and then we discuss, and I try to put everything in details, what's going on and so forth, and if there is, when is the spouse seeing when is he having the affair? Is it in the evening? Is it after work? Is it on the weekends? And so forth. So we get to really a detail, and then after that, I take down all the information, the name, the address, the kind of vehicle he drives, and, all that kind of information. And then after that, it's the client who tells me, look, I want you to follow my spouse at this day, at this particular time, starting from this address. And because that's what they figured, that it's probably the high level of seeing, the having the affair.
We're talking with private investigator Jorge Pinto, and it's amazing. And so when we were talking off air, George, it's not exactly like we see on the television shows your life. It's your surveillance. So I think you found yourself sometimes 24/7 surveillance. It's got to be hard, but they're doing, correct?
Yeah, it's totally unpredictable. It's like really unpredictable when you follow someone no one knows what's going to happen. No one, not even the client. The client knows what's going to happen. So yeah, sometimes you end up doing surveillance as in a location that you never thought, I never expect I was going to end up in, and nevertheless, the hours that I'm going to finish. So it's always unpredictable. But that's, in a way, I guess I'm so young. 30 years I've been doing this.
So it's fun. It comes to mind that, like, Get Smart, of course, and you're thinking, like, agents, whoever, in the toilet bowl and the whole, where he just sort of manages to go wherever, however. It's that's what I think of. But hopefully you don't have to go into toilet bowls. But you spent a lot of we just spent a lot of time talking about the surveillance of a spouse. But I think that I know for a fact you've shared with us that there's more than just someone who suspects their partner of infidelity. There's employees that are they're supposed to be working, but they're working from home. So or those that don't want to go back, maybe giving some questionable excuses. Is that part of your caseload?
Yeah, it is. I like, marital cases, I will probably, let's say I will do 45%, and then the rest, it's all corporate, employers who call me to follow their employees who are on sick leave, and this is also another a huge increase that I've been seeing. Where there's a lot of demand now to be employees are staying home, and some of them are taking advantage of this pandemic, COVID, to stay home or trying to do other work under the table, basically.
Yeah, so interesting and it makes sense. First of all, the pandemic has worried a lot of people. Employees are perhaps very nervous to go back to work. Yet employers, I understand their perspective as well. They need their employees to work, and if they can't continue with all their employees at home and they need employees back at the office, it's a bit of a conundrum for them. And so it's quite interesting, George, that you were to say employers are having to go to these levels to perhaps surveil some employees that just aren't going to work. So are you camping outside their house? You're following them? What happens in those situations?
Yeah, well, that's what it is. I end up doing the surveillances. I mean, typically they're supposed to be home because, typically they will say that, I don't want to go to the office because I don't want to be, in touch with my colleagues and so forth. And so I do start the surveillance from their personal homes. And then as I follow them, some of them are doing, some of them are just taking the advantage of doing repairs at their chalet homes. Some of them are doing, under the table work. They're actually doing other side jobs, and it's rare. Actually, you actually see them staying home. I did a case very, very closely where the individual was actually telling the employer, "Look, I'm staying home because my wife is scared that I bring the COVID home." So he used that as an excuse, and it turns out that he was actually doing the work. He actually ended up opening up his own business, and he ended up being a directly competitor with the employer. So it's, the employers, they have the, they definitely should keep an eye on the employees and try to see if they're really trustworthy with this pandemic COVID excuse.
And George, you kid yourself. You've got story after story. Corrie and I were just looking at each other, and it's endless. And we're going to hear about a very recent story about a wife who had her husband followed, and let's just say the husband ended up getting an unwanted surprise. And George is going to tell us about that particular story.
Live unrehearsed on CJAD 800. Brought to you by Marco Vendramini of IG Private Wealth Management. MarcoVendramini.com.
Welcome back to Life Unrehearsed. I'm Corrie Sirota with my co-host Matt Del Vecchio, and we are talking to private investigator Jorge Pinto. I just love talking to you, George, because you have like such an upbeat attitude, and I don't know how you do what you do. It's got to be really challenging at times, and so you had shared with Matt, and I heard a little bit about it, and I want our listeners to hear this very recent story about, in this case, it was a wife who asked her husband, asked you to follow her husband. And my understanding was that the husband ended up getting something, getting an unwanted surprise, shall we say.
Yeah, that did. Well, that's what it is. Yeah, the wife, first of all, the husband, they've been married for over 10 years, and they have children. And so the husband says, I have to leave town because I'm leaving for 7 days on business. And so he mentions the town where he's going to, which is a 2.5 hour distance. And therefore, Friday morning, I start the surveillance Friday morning. And so he does leave the residence, and I'm expecting him to go to the town as he mentioned, but no. What he did is he leaves Montreal. Matter of fact, he lives in Montreal, and he goes down to the South Shore. So right away we're already going off way. And what does he do? Of course, he ends up at a private residence, and in that private residence, even what I noticed that he actually had the keys. He actually had the keys of the residence. So right there, I said, okay, he's definitely been here much before. So, and indeed, of course, he did have, he had the mistress, let's call the name mistress. And therefore, like an hour after, they all leave together in the vehicle, and they end up leaving town. And they did not go to the town as he had mentioned to the wife. He ended up going to a different town, another 2 hours away, on the opposite end. And so that's it. So they got, I did the surveillance, and I followed them, and they got to the hotel, a nice hotel, beautiful hotel, and, filmed them unloading the luggages and so forth, and entering the hotel. So I know that they're going to be staying here for 7 days. But as I'm doing the surveillance, and when I got to the town, the city, obviously, I'm always in touch with the client, so I ended up calling the client, and I said, look, your husband, first of all, he did not go to the town as he mentioned, and nevertheless, this is what happened. He went to pick up the mistress at her house, and he's here now. He's here, and here's the hotel, and so forth. So obviously, the wife was in shock. It was very tough, very, very tough for her to listen to this. And what I did is I actually ended up staying that evening at the hotel, because the wife, she had the courage. She ended up showing the next day, and she says, you know what? I am coming tomorrow. I am going to be showing up at the hotel, and I'm going to confront him face to face. And matter of fact, she did. She arrived in town the following day, and she arrived in the afternoon, and that's what it is. And she got there, and she called him up, and he came downstairs. I could imagine the run that he must have had on the hotel lobby. And, and she confronted face to face. And, it's stories like this that, majority of my clients, that's what happens is when I catch them, the spouse cheating, and especially when it comes to the hotels and so forth, the spouse will come and confront the other spouse face to face, because there's no more denying. There's nothing to be denied, and it's always human nature of seeing how they, how do they confront? Like when they get caught, it's incredible to see the reaction. When they get caught, And
that's what happens when you hire Jorge Pinto for these situations. My goodness, George. Has it ever, we're talking with private investigator Jorge Pinto from Plan B Investigations, just incredible stories. George, has it ever been reversed? Have you ever been caught?
Not cheating. No. Matt,
let's
rephrase that. Have you ever been caught surveilling someone? Oh my God, you're going to destroy his life right here on the show.
And he's going on vacation with his wife.
And my lovely wife, she's and by the way, she actually told me if anybody's courageous out of all this, it's actually my wife, who's been married to me for 21 years, and she's the one who's been enduring all this because I'm never home, right?
Right.
Good for you, George. But have you been caught?
Yeah. Look, how do I say it? Not to show off or anything like that, but it's very rare I get caught. Very rare. And again, it's not to show off, and I really I don't expect the listeners to take it that way. It's because I take so much precaution in every single file following someone that it's extremely rare that I'll get caught. And if I did get caught, I'm sure I did, but it's probably going back a few years ago.
Okay, fair enough. So here, let's destroy your business on the spot. One quick way. What's the most common way to get caught?
to get.
In other
like-
words, who if you're
Yeah,
catching people
if
out,
you're
what are
catching
they
them,
doing?
what are
They always
what
think
should-
they're
let's-
foolproof,
yeah.
right? They'll never get caught. What are they
Yeah.
doing to get caught? What are the obvious things?
Well, look,
Texting,
for
social
sure,
media?
Well, for sure, when I'm following someone, the first thing I want to pay attention to is, are they being careful or not? And for sure, when they're going to go see their lover, they're going to be in a little higher alert. And this is where the precautions. This is where I have to take the precautions. I have to stay far away. But eventually, some of them are. How do I say? Some of them are really cautious, and they will make like 3 or 4 or 5 U-turns before they go to the destination.
Right.
And I can tell right away when they start doing all these U-turns and so forth. This is where the limit. I have to know which limit. How far can I push this? But so forth. But some of them, they feel comfortable. They feel comfortable, and comfortable in a way of speaking. And that's what happens is that they get caught because they do go directly straight to the destination that they want to.
George, we could go on and on.
Yeah.
George, will you come back on the show again?
Oh my God, it's an honor to be at your show, and I thank you so much. It's really
we certainly appreciate you. That's George Pinto from Plan B Investigations. George, how can people get a hold of you?
Well, the best way, it's actually, my company is called Plan B Investigations. I'm on the web, but the best way, and it's directly, it's 514-816-9872.
Thanks so much, George. It's always a treat to talk to you, and keep doing the most important work. Well, people may not like it, but I know that it's important work that you're doing. So
thank you so much, Matt and Corrie. Thank you.
Thank you, George.
So coming up, do you have a particular fear or phobia? We'll be talking to psychotherapist Georgia Dow, who will be providing us with some ways to effectively deal with fears and phobias, especially during COVID-19.